Hello, I'm Hope Logan. I am an actor on Bold and the Beautiful, and many people really love both me and our Bold and the Beautiful drama. So I've come here to share updates about my beloved Bold and the Beautiful. Everyone, please subscribe and support me. If you do, I will keep coming every day with new updates for you. In the ever-shifting world of the Bold and the Beautiful, a noticeable storm is beginning to form around Liam Spencer, whose presence has long been defined by hesitation and emotional indecision. But something about him is changing, subtly at first, then with undeniable force, as if a long-dormant part of his personality is finally waking up. Liam Spencer is no longer the man who endlessly wavered between choices or softened his stance to avoid conflict. Instead, he appears to be stepping into a more assertive version of himself, one that speaks with clarity and acts with purpose. This transformation carries the unmistakable imprint of Bill Spencer's influence, as though years of watching his powerful father refuse to back down from anyone are finally taking root within him. Where there was once hesitation, there is now determination, and where there was avoidance, there is an emerging willingness to confront challenges head-on. It feels less like a minor adjustment and more like a fundamental shift in identity, one that signals Liam may be leaving behind his old self for something far more intense and unyielding. As this evolution takes shape, it begins to reshape Liam's relationships, especially the complicated emotional triangle that has long surrounded Hope Logan Spencer and Steffy Forrester Finnegan. There was a time when Hope did not feel fully supported by Liam, particularly when it came to her professional struggles and her place within Forrester Creations, and that emotional distance once created cracks in their bond that could not be easily repaired. In fact, those unresolved tensions helped set the stage for one of the most dramatic turning points in their history, Hope's unexpected kiss with Thomas Forrester during their time in Italy, a moment that forever altered the emotional landscape between them. Meanwhile, Liam's long-standing effort to remain diplomatic, especially in matters involving Steffy, due to their shared connection as parents, once defined his approach as cautious and restrained. But that restraint now seems to be fading, replaced by a sharper edge, as Liam becomes increasingly willing to voice criticism of Steffy and stand firmly in his loyalty to Hope without hesitation. The balance he once tried so carefully to maintain is beginning to tilt, and with it comes a more polarizing version of Liam that divides opinion even among those closest to him. Now, this new direction is pushing Liam into territory that feels far more confrontational and unpredictable, particularly as tensions rise around Hope's dissatisfaction with her role at Forrester Creations. Rather than focusing on preserving harmony within the company or maintaining peace between competing families, Liam appears increasingly centered on protecting Hope's happiness at any cost, even if it means ignoring the potential fallout for the business itself. This shift reveals a more self-focused layer to his transformation, one that prioritizes personal loyalty over broader consequences, echoing the uncompromising nature of Bill Spencer in subtle but unmistakable ways. Yet, even as this dollar bill-inspired energy surfaces within him, Liam still does not fully descend into the ruthless extremes his father is known for. Instead, he hovers somewhere in between, caught in a growing tension between who he was and who he is becoming. That tension is bound to ignite conflict, especially with Steffy Forrester Finnegan, who is unlikely to accept this new version of Liam without pushing back directly and forcefully. As Hope's career trajectory begins to shift and potentially makes a major impact at Logan, the stage is being set for heated confrontations, emotional outbursts, and shouting matches that will leave lasting consequences in their wake. In this unfolding transformation, Liam is no longer simply reacting to the world around him. He is actively reshaping it, and the ripple effects are only just beginning to surface. The pressure building around Liam's transformation doesn't stay hidden for long, especially as tensions at Forrester Creations begin to escalate behind closed doors. What once might have been quiet disagreements now start to feel like open fractures in the fragile balance between the Logans and the Foresters, and Liam finds himself standing closer to the center of the storm than ever before. As Hope's ambitions grow and her dissatisfaction becomes impossible to ignore, Liam becomes her most vocal defender, stepping into conversations with a force that surprises even those who know him best. His words are sharper now, his patience shorter, and his willingness to challenge the Foresters more direct than it has ever been before. That change does not go unnoticed, and it doesn't take long before Steffy Forrester Finnegan begins to see Liam not as the cautious co-parent she once negotiated with, but as someone increasingly aligned against her. What follows is not just disagreement, but the early sparks of something far more volatile, an emotional collision course that neither of them seems able to step away from. When Steffy finally confronts Liam, it is not a quiet conversation, but a charged exchange loaded with history, frustration, and disbelief at how much he has changed. She pushes back against his growing hostility toward her and the company she has fought to protect, questioning whether his loyalty to Hope has begun to cloud his judgment entirely. Liam, however, no longer retreats the way he once did. Instead, he stands his ground with an intensity that feels both unfamiliar and unsettling, as if he is speaking with a voice borrowed from someone far more hardened than himself. Every argument between them carries echoes of their past, but now those echoes are drowned out by present-day tension that refuses to settle. The emotional weight of their shared history as co-parents makes the confrontation even more painful, because neither can fully detach from the consequences of what they are saying. And as the argument escalates, it becomes clear that this is no longer just about Hope's position at Forrester Creations. It is about power, loyalty, and the shifting identity of Liam Spencer himself. Meanwhile, beneath all the conflict, Bill Spencer's shadow continues to loom larger, shaping the way Liam moves through every decision and every confrontation. It is not that Liam has become his father overnight, but rather that he is beginning to mirror certain instincts he once resisted, an unwillingness to back down, a sharper sense of possession, and a growing belief that protecting what matters may require uncomfortable levels of confrontation. This emerging version of Liam creates a ripple effect that unsettles everyone around him because it disrupts the predictable patterns they once relied on. Hope finds herself supported more fiercely than ever, but that support comes with consequences she may not yet fully understand, while Steffy prepares herself for further clashes that feel increasingly inevitable. As the emotional landscape shifts and alliances tighten, one thing becomes unmistakably clear. Liam's transformation is no longer a quiet evolution. It is a catalyst, and whatever comes next will leave no relationship untouched by the fallout. As the fallout from Liam's increasingly aggressive stance continues to spread, the atmosphere around both the Logan and Forrester worlds becomes heavier, almost as if every conversation is now charged with unspoken consequences. Hope Logan Spencer begins to feel the weight of Liam's unwavering support in a way that is both comforting and unsettling, because his loyalty is no longer quiet or cautious. It is loud, visible, and impossible to ignore. What once felt like gentle encouragement has transformed into something far more intense, as Liam positions himself firmly beside her, even when doing so places him directly in opposition to powerful forces at Forrester Creations. This new dynamic strengthens Hope's confidence in her own ambitions, but it also raises the stakes of every decision she makes, knowing Liam will not hesitate to challenge anyone who stands in her way. The ripple effect of his behavior spreads quickly through the company, where staff and executives alike begin to realize that disagreements are no longer just professional, they are deeply personal, and with each passing moment, the line between loyalty and confrontation becomes thinner, more fragile, and more dangerous. Steffy Forrester Finnegan, meanwhile, finds herself increasingly cornered by Liam's transformation, as his once familiar restraint is replaced by a boldness that feels almost unrecognizable. She watches as his words grow sharper, his tone more confrontational, and his willingness to question her leadership becomes more frequent and more pointed. For Steffi, this shift does not feel like simple disagreement. It feels like a betrayal of the balance they once maintained for the sake of their child and shared history. Every encounter between them now carries an undercurrent of unresolved emotion, but instead of softening the tension, those emotions only deepen the divide. Steffi begins to realize that the man she once negotiated peace with is no longer operating from the same emotional framework, and that realization forces her to recalibrate how she responds to him. Where there was once compromise, there is now resistance, and where there was once understanding, there is now an unrelenting clash of wills. As the conflict intensifies, Bill Spencer's influence continues to echo through Liam's actions like a distant but undeniable force shaping his instincts. The more Liam steps into confrontation, the more he appears to embody fragments of his father's unyielding nature, even if he still draws a line at the most ruthless extremes. This emerging parallel does not go unnoticed by those around him, especially as his decisions begin to prioritize protection over diplomacy and loyalty over neutrality. Yet beneath this hardened exterior, there remains a tension within Liam himself, as if he is still adjusting to the power of his own voice and the consequences it now carries. Each confrontation pushes him further into unfamiliar emotional territory, where clarity and conflict exist side by side, refusing to settle into balance. And as the world around him reacts to this shift, it becomes increasingly clear that Liam is no longer simply responding to events. He is driving them forward, whether everyone is ready or not. As Liam's transformation continues to deepen, the emotional temperature across both families rises to a level that feels increasingly unstable, as though every conversation is one step away from exploding into something irreversible. The ripple effects of his choices are no longer confined to private disagreements or quiet tension. They begin shaping the very direction of decisions inside Forrester Creations. Hope Logan Spencer, emboldened by Liam's unwavering support, starts to push forward with renewed determination, no longer second-guessing her place or her voice within the company. Yet that confidence comes with a growing awareness that every move she makes now carries added weight, because Liam's visible allegiance ensures that any conflict she enters will quickly escalate beyond professional boundaries. What once might have been manageable disputes between colleagues and executives now feels amplified, as if the entire environment has been pulled into a larger emotional storm. And at the center of it all, Liam stands more firmly than ever, no longer on the sidelines, but actively shaping the direction of the conflict with every word he speaks. Steffi Forrester Finnegan, on the other hand, finds herself increasingly frustrated by the way Liam's behavior continues to shift away from the man she once knew. His refusal to step back, his growing willingness to challenge her authority, and his increasingly protective stance toward Hope create a dynamic that feels both personal and deeply disruptive. What makes it even more difficult for Steffi is the lingering history they share, a connection built on co-parenting and long-standing emotional entanglement that now feels strained under the pressure of opposing loyalties. Every attempt she makes to assert control or restore balance is met with resistance that feels sharper than before, as if Liam is no longer interested in maintaining harmony, but instead in standing his ground no matter the cost. That realization forces Steffi into a more defensive position, where every interaction with him becomes a test of patience and restraint. And with each encounter, the emotional distance between them widens further, replaced by a tension that neither side seems willing or able to diffuse. As this escalating conflict unfolds, the shadow of Bill Spencer's influence becomes even more apparent, not as a direct imitation, but as a growing undertone in Liam's shifting mindset. The once reluctant mediator is slowly giving way to someone who understands the power of confrontation, even if he still hesitates at the edge of his father's more ruthless instincts. That internal conflict creates a compelling tension within Liam himself, as though he is constantly balancing between who he has always been and who he is becoming under pressure. Each decision he makes in defense of hope pushes him a little further into unfamiliar emotional territory, where loyalty begins to outweigh caution and conviction overrides compromise. Yet even as he embraces this new strength, there is an undeniable sense that the consequences of this transformation are beginning to gather just beyond the horizon. And as emotions flare and alliances tighten, it becomes clear that Liam's evolution is no longer just influencing the story around him, it is redefining it entirely, setting the stage for confrontations that will soon reach their breaking point. As the pressure reaches its breaking point, the world surrounding Liam Spencer begins to feel less like a stable network of relationships and more like a battlefield where every decision carries emotional consequences. The once predictable rhythm of exchanges between the Logans and the Forresters is replaced by a constant undercurrent of anticipation, as if everyone senses that something irreversible is about to happen. Hope Logan Spencer continues to move forward with growing determination, strengthened by Liam's unwavering presence beside her. But that support now feels less like a quiet foundation and more like a spotlight that draws attention to every step she takes. With Liam refusing to step back or soften his position, even the smallest disagreement inside Forrester Creations has the potential to spiral into something far larger than anyone intended. The company itself begins to feel the strain as personal loyalties and professional responsibilities collide in ways that threaten to destabilize long-standing alliances. And through it all, Liam stands increasingly at the center, not as a mediator, but as a driving force in the unfolding chaos. Steffy Forrester Finnegan, fully aware of how far things have escalated, finds herself confronting not just Liam's actions, but the unfamiliar intensity behind them. What unsettles her most is not simply his disagreement with her, but the certainty with which he now speaks, as though hesitation and compromise no longer have a place in his thinking. Every conversation between them becomes a clash of conviction, with Steffy pushing to preserve order and control, while Liam pushes back with a stubborn resolve that feels newly forged and unyielding. Their shared history as co-parents adds an unspoken layer of emotional complexity, making each confrontation more painful because neither can fully escape the weight of what they once meant to each other. Yet even that shared past is no longer enough to soften the edges of their present conflict, which grows sharper with every exchange. And as Steffi struggles to adapt to this version of Liam, she begins to realize that she is no longer dealing with hesitation or indecision, but with someone who has chosen a side and is unwilling to retreat from it. Beneath the surface of all this tension, Bill Spencer's influence continues to echo through Liam's choices, not as a conscious imitation, but as an instinctive shift in how he responds to pressure and opposition. The qualities he once kept at a distance, assertiveness, confrontation, and an almost unshakable loyalty to what he believes is right, now surface more naturally in moments of conflict. Yet even as these traits grow stronger, Liam remains caught in the tension between control and escalation, never fully surrendering to the more ruthless edge that defines his father. This internal balance creates a sense of unpredictability in him, as though no one, including Liam himself, can fully anticipate how far he is willing to go when pushed. That unpredictability begins to reshape how others respond to him, forcing them to adjust their strategies and expectations in real time. And as the emotional pressure continues to build, it becomes undeniable that Liam's transformation has reached a critical point, one where every choice he makes now carries the potential to change everything that follows.